All right, welcome everybody. This is Derek Bodner, joined by Rich Hofmann here live from, I always say live, but we're not live. This isn't going to be released live, but we're in person. Me and you are sitting close to each other as we record this podcast from a hidden corner of the Wells Fargo Center. How you doing, Rich?
I'm good, buddy. We're taking a page out of our friends Bo and Shields' book, recording a podcast after a game. I think they usually do it in Merrill Reese's announcing booth. We are not there. We are kind of just in a random room here.
We'll have to ask Zoo next time. Hey, can we record up in your booth? I think he'd be okay with that.
Yeah, he'd come on.
Of course, the booth here isn't quite the same. You'd have all the workers, putting the arena away, so to speak, taking everything down. It would be quite loud and probably not a great spot for it.
Probably not great. I think we picked the right spot. Also in the right spot, the Sixers.
They are.
They're playing well, man.
They are now 17-8. They've won 8 of their last 9 games. They're 13-1 at home, with the one loss being to the gosh darn Cleveland Cavaliers, which you wouldn't have picked if you had a choice. They are playing well. They're playing well post Jimmy Butler. Ben Simmons has sort of rebounded from an adjustment period in the first 2 games. I posted before the game. I think he was averaging about 18 points a game on 60% shooting from the field. Had another real good one tonight. 19 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists, 8 of 10 shooting. Couple turnovers, but that is to be expected. He's playing well. The team's playing well. And I guess we'll start off there. What are your overall impressions of how they're playing right now?
Yeah, and I think Ben's almost he's kind of the barometer for how well they're playing. And tonight, against a Memphis team that is, now I guess I should actually look at them before I say they're a good defensive team. They're a good defensive team, top 5 in the NBA. He comes out, and he just drives the ball right down their throat. And they jump out. I don't know if it was like 10-3, I think it was, to start the game. And yeah, when Ben gets going in transition and he can find shooters and they're getting stops, like, this is going to be a really tough team to deal with. I think tonight I was really impressed. He had a couple plays at the end of the game. One, he made a great save offensively in the fourth quarter, and they eventually got a Jimmy Butler layup. And then at the end, I think the Grizzlies were only trailing by 4, driving to kind of in transition to make it a 2-point game. Ben just chases a guy down because he's so freaking fast. It's unbelievable how much quicker he's moving than other NBA players. So the fact that he made winning plays tonight, it was good. And the last 2 games here, I'm not going to lie, they were kind of boring. They played the New York Knicks, who I know they've gotten some wins recently, but they didn't have it on Wednesday night. They weren't making any shots. And then Washington, I mean, the dysfunction on that team, my God, it was brutal to watch them play. So for the Sixers to beat a team that's playing well, veteran team, good team, they should feel pretty good. They have a litmus test game on Wednesday night, and they have not done so well.
They do, and they have not. And, I think you're right. Ben Simmons is a pretty good barometer for how well his team's playing. There's been a lot of concern over his long-term status with this core if he doesn't improve his jumper. And there's validity to that. And I think you can go too far on that. I think some people have. Without names, I think you can go too far with that concern. I think he's still going to be a very good player. But in order to be the best version of Ben Simmons, in order to be that top 20, top 15, even top 10 potential that he has, he's going to have to develop that jumper. But he's done a much better job recently of finding ways to contribute offensively, even without that. He did a good job searching out early clock sort of advantages, attacking the defense really before it's set today, searching out early post-up opportunities. And like you said, defensively, he was shot out of a cannon. He was great on that side of the court. He has been great at various points this season. And we talk so much about offensive fit. And I agree there's some concern. There is some concern about his fit with Joel Embiid offensively. Throw in, Jimmy Butler, and there's some concern. But we never talk about defensive fit. And right now, when you put Jimmy Butler, J.J. Redick, Ben Simmons, and Joel Embiid on the basketball court, they're really freaking good.
They're, I guess we should look up those numbers at some point. But they're...
Well, I wrote about it before today's. I don't have post... games after numbers after the Memphis Grizzlies game, but they were a plus 16.3, I believe, net rating in obviously limited minutes.
But I mean, that's pretty much like last year's starting lineup. And yeah, that's what you're looking for. I know, Jimmy still seems to be finding his way a little bit on offense. Brett talked a lot about that after the game, about how he's not trying to call too many plays. He wants them to kind of just flow into similar offense and get, not have him have to micromanage the game 24/7. And I think they're doing a pretty good job. Offense has not been the problem for them when Colin Sexton and D'Angelo Russell are shooting 100% on mid-range jumpers. They've struggled a little bit, but I think offensively they've been like a top 10 team since they've gotten Butler. I've been
impressed. They're up to top 10 on the season now, actually.
Yeah, but it has not fallen off with Jimmy there. I thought, while the defense has been a little concerning the last couple weeks, they've played some bad teams, not juggernaut offenses the last week here. I've been impressed with how those guys have fit together. Yeah. It seems like Ben and Jimmy have a good chemistry, like whether it's early offense, those hit-ahead passes over the top, or that one play they run a million times a game where Ben's posting up and he can hand it off to Jimmy. It's been good, and Jimmy says he's having a lot of fun. We'll see how that goes. If the team's not playing poorly, but if they start to take a step back, but they're playing well right now. I think you should be fairly happy as a Sixers fan about how they're going.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point that I don't really want to get into, but a lot of people will see like Jimmy Butler buying shoes for people in the front office.
What a great teammate.
Right. And look, there are certainly positive aspects to Jimmy Butler. There's certainly, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that things will go south, but I think a lot of times in these situations, and frankly it happens with young players too, where you see the positives real early, then you focus on the negatives and the pendulum swings a little too far. And I think sort of like player evaluation, I try to keep a little bit of an even keel on this. And I don't think anybody who talked to will say Jimmy Butler is a bad guy. I think what people will say is that there are aspects of his personality that can become grating over time. And I think that cumulative effect is more of what happens than he shows up and just pisses people off. So I'm not telling you that Jimmy Butler is going to be a problem. I'm saying that a couple weeks isn't proof that certain aspects of his personality couldn't become grating to probably the wrong people. And I think maybe you could say that Chicago and Minnesota might have had the wrong personality types to pair with Jimmy Butler, and we'll find out if that's true if the Sixers do sign him that long-term deal. But like most things, don't overreact to short-term kind of ebbs and flows.
I do think, as somebody barges in on us, I guess it has not been established that it's our room yet.
Put a Sixers beat sign on the door.
People be like, what the hell is that? Real quick, plus 15.6 in 150 minutes. Those four guys together. It's pretty good. Pretty good.
I think the numbers I grabbed were from cleaning the glass.
Okay.
So there's probably a little bit of fluctuation because, first of all, people define possessions differently, which is frustrating.
Yeah.
But also Ben tries to filter out garbage time. So they should be within the same ballpark. They are within the same ballpark. Very good lineup.
They're doing good.
They're doing well, yes.
They're doing good.
Yep.
They, as far as the personalities go, I do think, like, on first watch, the Sixers have the right level of personalities. You could tell after tonight's game, Butler was talking about Simmons, like, man, I loved how hard he plays, and they have these side bets, and, they're the headband bros and all these things. It does seem, though, that, like, Jimmy Butler wants people to play hard around him. That's not really a problem around here.
And that's... The other day, Brett Brown made mention that he was asking Butler to kind of take Simmons under his wing defensively. And that is something where at LSU, you would have said Simmons, that might be an issue for Jimmy Butler, because LSU Ben Simmons did not give the kind of effort that Jimmy Butler enjoys to play alongside of. So the fact that we don't really have to question that at all with these guys is... a credit to Ben Simmons and a credit to Brett Brown for getting him to this point to where he's locked in defensively.
Those headbands are pretty big, by the way.
They are. They're not.
They look
I would not rock those.
No.
If they're going to play well, keep doing it.
I think it would be funny if TJ rocked them too. But there's
one day one day we have to show up to like the athletic meetup with headbands on.
No, we don't. What are you talking about? No, they. TJ's another guy, plays really hard, and again, things seem to be going well. They have Toronto and Detroit. That's kind of a tough road this week, but as far as like playing, I said we weren't going to talk about them, but I have to mention it that they were playing Markelle Fultz in the starting lineup at the beginning of the year, and they were integrating new pieces, and Wilson Chandler hasn't been healthy. He, again, missed tonight's game. Muscala hasn't been healthy. For them to be 17-8, I know Brett Brown said he doesn't look at record, and I think that's the right way to look at it. It's like how the team is playing matters to him more, but with the team sort of rounding into form after winning all those freaking close games, they should feel, pretty good about where they are right now, I think.
I think record matters a little bit. Like, you'd rather pick up these wins when you're not playing great than not pick up these wins.
And that's how the playoffs get seeded.
And at the end of the year, that's going to matter for seeding.
Your net rating is not giving you a home court advantage.
No, that's true. But what that comes with, yes, it's great they're winning now, but they have to also kick it up into another gear, especially starting Wednesday when some of these tougher teams come into town, or they go out to Toronto for that tougher team. Real quick before we get into some of the other pieces, a word from DraftKings. Everyone has that one atrocious fantasy draft that ruins your entire season, making the rest of the season an effort in futility where you've practically lost all interest in the league. If you're in a keeper league, maybe you can start making moves that you may pay off 18 months down the road. It doesn't have to be that way, and playing one-day fantasy basketball at DraftKings is the best way to put your basketball knowledge to the test. DraftKings is giving away over $400 million in prizes this season. It's not the case anymore, but back in the day, before that sports franchise bubble, that would have been enough to buy your own NBA team. It's a lot of money. No matter what your skill level is, there's a contest waiting for you at DraftKings. Drafting your team is simple. Just select 8 players and stay under the $50,000 salary cap. The best part is you get to draft a new team every day without any long-term commitment. There's no better way to turn your love of basketball into cash. To download the app, head on over to DraftKings.com now and use our code Sixers to support the show and enter a free contest with your first deposit. And remember, there will be $400 million in total prizes up for grabs throughout the season. That's code Sixers to play for free with your first deposit. Only at DraftKings.com. Minimum $5 deposit required. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details. All right. Moving on to the rest of the team outside of those top 4. You have, like you said, Wilson Chandler hurt, took a knee to the thigh. Brett Brown expects him to be available for Wednesday's game against Toronto, but he made note that something could happen.
Sounds like he's going to play.
It sounds like he's going to play. Mike Muscala started at the 4. Before that, he had been converted to almost solely a backup, or getting all of the backup 5 minutes that weren't in blowout situations. How do you think those two specifically have looked of late and in those roles that they're now placed in?
It's good to see Moose less at the 4. I know he was pressed into duty tonight because Wilson was hurt, but I think we've said on this podcast for a while and in our writing that we didn't really care what the numbers said at the beginning of the year. The Amir Moose lineups are that's not going to cut it.
And spoiler alert, the numbers don't.
Now say, they now
negative 17.9 net rating when those two are on the floor heading into tonight's game.
And look, we criticized Brett about that, and I do think he hung on to Amir a little bit too long, but to be fair to him, like, Moose and Wilson were not available for most of the year. So, he hasn't had a full deck to work with. I think they've played pretty well. I mean, we kind of joke about calling Wilson Chandler a 3-and-D wing. Like, yeah. I like the way Brown.
I'm not 100% sure he's really good at either of those in this stages of his career. But
I'm not.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think he'll have up and down nights. Like, I mean, God, do you remember when we were in Orlando? Like, he almost won that game for them at the end with all the scoring. But then there are times like when you ISO Wilson, I'm not like. He might shoot an air ball or two, like he didn't play that well the other night against Washington either. So, I think those guys are like, they're not like top end bench players, but, I think you can get by with this level of top talent. I mean, the Sixers are a top heavy team, man. And honestly, like, the guy who I'm more excited about is the Kork.
Yeah.
Kork has been popped.
He's been playing significant minutes, and he's been playing decently too. And that's going to bring people. That's going to frustrate people all year because they obviously declined that third-year rookie extension or rookie option, which makes him a free agent, an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season, limits how much the Sixers can offer him. And, at the time, they were getting real close to being able to offer a max contract next summer. They were within $1 million or $2 million, I think, of being able to do that after declining that option. And I think that weighed heavily on their minds. And you obviously wonder, could they have just traded him to somebody with cap space next summer, My biggest gripe about that, though, is that they never really gave him a chance on the court to evaluate him against NBA players. And I get that last year was tough with the Liz Frank injury. He came back towards the end of the season. Hard to put a rookie who wasn't ready in that kind of a playoff run. But I think it was Jim Adair who tweeted at me today that prior to declining that option, he was playing about 5 minutes per game. And Brett Brown has sort of been forced into integrating him into this rotation. He's responded by playing well. He's making his shots. It looks like he's playing a little bit better defense, although he's always going to have concerns on that end. But it would have been nice to get this run in before you had to make that decision. And like I said, some fans I think are going to regret him playing well. I still think the best option, because Sixers are a team that A, needs shooting and B, needs depth. And if he plays, even if he's only a short-term piece, he could be a useful short-term piece for a team that needs his skill set.
Yeah, EB thought about handing out his own Philly Max to somebody else maybe, and that kind of got in the way. It sucks that Korkmaz playing well. There's a damper over it because it's like, well, he's a freaking free agent after this season. So yeah, that stinks. But like him playing the wing spot as a backup, I mean, God, like he's moving the ball pretty well, and like I agree with you. His defense is never going to be good, but like Brett made a good point today. He's like, well, he is long. Like when he's in the right spot, like it's harder to shoot over him.
But it's keeping him in that right spot that is the challenge.
Oh yeah, and there are nights like he won't be in the right spot. Like
I'm pretty sure you and I could pick him off with the screen, and we're not exactly the biggest dudes on the court.
When they play him and Shamet together, it's not exactly like the strongest two players in the world. Like those two dudes need to get in the weight room a little bit, and that's still not going to solve many of their problems either. Yeah, I've been impressed by Furkan, and like, you know, for a team that at the beginning of the year, it was just like, they have 6 guys, and Korkmaz was sitting on the bench, and we didn't really think that much of him. But it's like you said, maybe he just didn't have the opportunity. And some wings, some wings take a little while to get going. I never could understand, like, his numbers in international play this year were actually pretty good. I didn't really watch too many of those games, but, like playing for the Turkish national team, he played pretty well. We saw him in Summer League. The one game, he had like 100 points, 40, okay, same thing, against the Celtics where he went nuts. And then he was terrible the rest of the trip. So it helps, man. Like when you have Jimmy Butler and Ben Simmons, these shot creators on the court, like a guy that can freaking make a shot. And like you said tonight, I do like that when he gets the ball, like, up high around his chin, like he just shoots it right away. Like it doesn't take. He's the anti Omri Caspi in that sense. As a point of reference, by the way, Derek, Kyle, and I were. I mean, we've seen some pretty weird shooting motions around here in our time. It's not like it's foreign to see somebody like look a little crazy. Omri Caspi's shooting motion was. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it.
No, and he's always had a low release. It seems like it's even lower, but beyond that, it's almost like he tried to do a one-motion shot on a release that, we were joking, the set point seems like it's down around his waist, and it's just a weird-looking shot that doesn't look like he should be able to ever get it off in an NBA game. To his credit, he made a decent amount in warm-ups. It was just an, oh my God, what is that kind of moment?
And we don't usually get those when we're watching the other team.
No.
Usually we keep that in the house. So I mean, like the whole team's playing well. I think it's a little bit of a bummer that Jonah Bolden is hurt, because I actually was kind of impressed in the little run he got. That
and they could use another big man like that.
Yeah, because then Moose, you could have started Bolden tonight, just to keep Moose on the bench and in that role, And I do think this is a team, we'll always talk about Joel's minutes.
Played 37 tonight.
37 tonight. Yeah. I don't know if he's still leading the league, but he's pretty close, if not. I don't think we've talked about that on a podcast or anything. What do you think they should be, like, he's playing too many minutes.
Too many damn minutes, absolutely.
So what do? You just say, like, you're playing 32 minutes tonight. That's it. Do you just, like, lessen the rotation a little bit?
I mean, I'd experiment some. I'd like to see some more Ben Simmons at the 5. It seems like they pulled that out for a game or two and then kind of ditched it. I would play. See, it would be great to play a lot more small ball, but you just don't. When you do that, you start getting into like TJ and Korkmaz and Shamit lineups that you just don't want to get into.
And then Korkmaz gets bullied and there's nobody to protect the rim.
Right. So there aren't many great options. They certainly need, another bigger wing. They certainly need another point of attack defender where maybe you could put these small ball lineups where you don't have to rely on Ben Simmons or Jimmy Butler to defend the point of attack as much as they currently do. They just don't, in a perfect world, Muscala and Amir Johnson, when you need him, should be able to get you 14 to 15 minutes of rest for Joel Embiid. That's all you really need. But right now they're using them at the 4 so much they don't have the perimeter and wing defenders to really allow Ben Simmons to play at the 4 as much as you would want to get away with something like this, or play at the 4 defensively as much as you would want to get away with something like this. They just don't have the personnel right now. But, what they need to do is sort of like what they did this week, where they just blew teams out, where you don't let Phoenix stick around like you did, where you put your foot on the Cavs, which they didn't. That's good. And also you need Muscala to play well at the 5, and you need Wilson Chandler to get back and play.
And you need your deep bench guys. You need to trust them to not cough up the lead, which Brett, I don't think he did in the Knicks game. To his credit, he fixed it against Washington. He said, I'm going to let Furkan and Shake give us a thrill.
Well, I think part of that was also that the Knicks showed they at least gave a shit, and Washington didn't. And I think Brett probably, besides learning from his mistake, and I think he did to some degree, but I think there was also a little bit of, I don't think Washington has it in them to come back from this one.
Their lack of not giving a shit.
It was striking. Incredible.
What a brutal team to root for.
We talked about that. We were covering that team. Look, we covered some bad freaking basketball. We're not adverse to that. But there was nothing interesting about that team. And they just don't look like they care or they like each other or anything.
And where's your future, too? You're trying to win now. Like, at least the Sixers, there was no promise of them being good, but, there was a plan to being good at some point. Yeah. And those teams also, they gave effort. They lost by 30, but they gave effort. Joe is down, before tonight's game, he was down to 6th in minutes played. So, progress. Behind Kevin Durant, both Holiday brothers, Klay Thompson, and Zach LaVine.
And it sounds so stupid. We talk about 4 minutes a game. But I think Spike brought this up recently. 4 minutes a game over an 82-game season. You're talking about 9 games worth of minutes. It does add up. It does help keep him fresh for April and May and maybe even June. Who knows about the injury? I think Tom Haberstroh has probably written an article or two about that. Might help there. I think specifically he wrote one at the time that Cousins went out last year. There are just a whole lot of reasons you want to see those minutes. Even if Joel's not going to sit very many games, and I think right now it's pretty clear that Joel isn't interested in sitting all that many games.
That's the other problem.
But keeping those minutes to a manageable level for a 7'2" player of his size with his lower body injury history, I do think it's something they have to. And Brett talks about prioritizing it all the time, and then he comes out in a game and he's playing 38 minutes. I get that it's tough to do. I get that you don't necessarily have the personnel to do it, but it has to be a priority. It has to.
One of the benefits, earlier in the week, I wrote about the pick and roll defense and kind of how Joe hanging back, they surrendered all these mid-range jumpers, which, it looks good on the stat sheet. It's that was hot shooting. They got lucky. But you also were just letting guys walk right into mid-range jumpers. I do wonder if that conservative coverage, I got frustrated watching them splash those jumpers because Joe can get out there. On the other hand, it's at least he's kind of conserving some energy, right? He's
and some of those 3-pointers too that he takes, it's a lot of work to bang bodies down low like that. Maybe he's not the greatest 3-point shooter in the world, although I still believe that over time he will get that up to 34, 35, 36%. I think he's a talented enough shooter. And he's shown enough mid-range that he's going to get that shot out there. But maybe 30 with 31%, whatever he's shooting on a season, isn't what you would want. But I think part of it is that Bang does take a lot out of him.
I don't think we're seeing him totally in conservation mode yet. No. But we're starting to see some signs of it, right?
He's playing 35 minutes a night. And having to play both ends and carrying a huge load offensively and relied upon as much as anyone in the league defensively, it's a lot of work.
2 years ago, and even at the beginning of last year, when he was not playing back-to-backs and he was getting nights off, he was jumping into the third row twice a game. You don't see that anymore.
Thank God.
But, it sucks because, I think Spike had a thing today. Why isn't he getting more MVP buzz? I agree with that. I think as the team starts taking off a little bit, it wasn't his fault that they were playing poorly, or they were up and down or whatever. Like, he should get more MVP buzz. His numbers are like freaking Shaq if you just look at his counting stats, which a lot of MVP voters do, and you combine that with like really good defense. It sucks that you have to worry. Like, he's finally here and he's finally playing so great, and now it's like, is he playing too much?
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
This is the path we've taken, though.
It is. That it is. All right.
Jaren Jackson, by the way, really enjoyed watching him.
Super fun.
I put him on the same level as Kemba Walker, as like a guy who's like not a superstar in the league, and you watch him on TV and you're like, oh yeah, he's fun, he's good. When you watch him in person, though, it's like, wow, like the way that guy moves like a gazelle.
Yeah, he does, and he was impacting everything around the rim. He was coming from all over the court to alter those shots. He would have been, I think you had him. Did you have him? No, you had him 2.
I had him 2.
I had him 3. I'm really regretting that. He is very fun to watch. His game is translated. He's making his outside shots. I think it was only 1 for 4 from 3 today, but he's taking them. He's making them. He looks real good. And he's like super young. Was he like 19? I think still. Super young, playing at a high level right now. He's going to be fun to watch. All right. We'll get into the upcoming schedule real quick. Before that, a word from Action Heat, the Philadelphia-based manufacturer of some of the world's best battery-heated clothing. Stay warm this winter with heat on demand and at the touch of a button. Action Heat clothing is engineered to safely and efficiently deliver heat via heating panels similar to a heated car seat. They can reach temperatures of up to 135 degrees Fahrenheit and are powered by rechargeable 5-volt lithium-ion batteries that can last up to 12 hours on each charge. Action Heat batteries can also be used to recharge your phone or any other gadget while you're wearing them. These gifts are perfect for any friend or family on your holiday shopping gift list, or for anyone who works outdoors, for skiers or snowboarders, or anybody that loves the outdoors but hates being cold. Action Heat clothing provides toasty warmth and comfort for your whole body, starting at just $39.99. Heated products include heated jackets, socks, gloves, hats, and even undergarments like heated base layer shirts and long johns, and is available in men's and women's sizes, and with great new styles and models just released for this winter season. Make winter activities more enjoyable with a blast of warmth. Action Heat is a perfect solution to keep you warm and toasty even in the most frigid winter weather. I've recently purchased a set of wool heated socks, which include 2 lithium polymer power packs, which can deliver heat for up to 8 hours, which I can't wait to try out during the upcoming snowboarding season. Join in the fun. We've got a special offer for our listeners to save 20% off your entire order. Just go to actionheat.com/Sixers to check out everything Action Heat has to offer. That's actionheat.com/Sixers, or use our coupon code Sixers at checkout to save 20%. Stay toasty and warm while you enjoy all your outdoor activities this winter with Action Heat. All right, they move on now. Like we said, winners of 8 of the last 9, playing well, playing mostly against subpar competition. You had the Pelicans in there, you had the Jazz in there. Tonight against Memphis was a good opponent, but there's a lot of Knicks, a lot of Wizards,
Phoenix,
a lot of Cavs, which still, I'm sure, keeps Brett Brown up at night. Kept Jimmy Butler up at night. He mentioned that they overlooked the opponent on that one game they lost at home and led us to deduce who he was talking about, but they're 13-1 at home, so even I can figure this one out. But they're going to have a much more difficult challenge coming up. They have the Raptors in Toronto on Wednesday, a team they really got blown out against early in the season. It was not a competitive game, was not the best game they have played. Obviously, it's a different team now. Sixers have Jimmy Butler, but the Raptors, I believe, have reeled off 8 in a row. They will be rested. They play in Toronto on Monday and then have the day off, so it's not like you have a back-to-back to kind of, help you out in that regard. Are we putting too much into this one game in early December by calling it a measuring stick? Or is it truly something you look to for that?
Yes, we're putting too much into it. It's one regular season game. I mean, we said this at the beginning of the year. Like, the Sixers are going to win, X amount of games. They're going to be in the playoffs. The Raptors are the same way. We care about playing their best basketball, when it actually matters.
I mean, last time we freaked out about a regular season game was against Boston to open up the season, and Boston has just been out of sorts ever since.
Yeah, and the problem with that is, well, it's a one-game sample size, so your whole season is sucked to that point. You would like to see them play a little better, though. Like, I mean, God, they played the 3, the three other contenders in the East, I guess, if we're calling Milwaukee, Boston, and Toronto that. Although they did play, Indiana's pretty good too, and they played well in Indy. But against those other three teams, they got their doors blown off all three times. And it's like, guys, can we just be competitive like in one of these games? And guess what? They didn't have Jimmy Butler for any of those games. And they'll, I think a few of those were on back-to-backs too, which, like, look, it's not a total excuse. Like, teams have to play back-to-backs. It works the other way too.
I think Toronto specifically was on a back-to-back, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, they're freaking good though, man.
Yeah,
like
good. And they're freaking deep too.
Oh, I mean, how many wings does that team have? Like, they're bringing Anunoby off the bench, and then they have like C.J. Miles and Danny Green and DeLon Wright and Norman Powell is there. They're just a very good basketball team. And with Kawhi, they've obviously raised their ceiling a little bit, trading him for DeRozan. So, like, I think earlier in the year when they were getting their doors blown off in every game, I was a little more concerned. Now that they have Butler, I think the calculus is a little bit different. They might have a little more leeway, hopefully, from the fan base with how they play here. But yes, like, even if they lose, like, can we just see some competitive crunch time possessions that I'm sure people will yell at Brett Brown about if they don't go well? Like, let's just try and see a close game. That would be my big thing. Like, just play them tough.
Yeah, it will be interesting to watch them match up. Like you said, that having Butler on the team now and that Butler-Kawhi matchup, that will be fun to watch. What the Sixers do with Toronto's backcourt, that will be interesting because they have been burned by some pick-and-roll play on the perimeter. That's a real good team. That's a real good team without any real apparent weaknesses either. They can go 8, 9, 10 deep and not lose a beat. They can play on both ends of the court. Kawhi is playing at an MVP level. Once again, does not show any signs of the injuries slowing him down at all. That was a great trade for them. They look much improved. I do think right now, I think before the season, we both put Boston and Toronto ahead of the Sixers on the pecking order. Certainly, Milwaukee has now joined that fray. But I think right now it's very easy to say that Toronto is a class for the Eastern Conference. Is it too much to call it a measuring stick? Yeah. But would it be great to see them play well? Yeah, that's true too.
It'd be good for them too, right? Like, it's one thing to blow the doors off the New York Knicks when they can't make a shot. Like, national TV, Toronto's going to be really excited for that game. I know they're getting like a lot of coverage. I think they're getting like the Sixers car wash when, everybody was being interviewed and all those things. To go in there and beat them would be big for this team's confidence. And I think a lot of the Sixers' tougher games when it comes to like Western Conference teams, that's going to be in the second half of the year because, those games are on national TV and that's when it matters. And that's when ABC kind of loads up all those games. But yeah, like in a month when there's, they're playing like Brooklyn and I think Indiana and somebody else at home next week. This is going to be the game that people are going to talk about until that West Coast trip. Yep. So yeah,
it's a pretty good test. Outside of Toronto, no real dominant teams, no real top of the conference or top of the league teams. But including tonight, Memphis at Toronto, at Detroit again, Brooklyn, and then the Pacers. So this is a good test. The schedule eases up a little bit then in the second half of December, at least in terms of quality of opponents, at least until you get to the, Christmas/New Year area. Then you start getting the Celtics and the Jazz and the Blazers and the Clippers, the Western Conference leading Los Angeles Clippers, which nobody expected to be saying here.
It's a sneaky good win they have on the schedule.
That is a sneaky good win they have on the schedule. But this will be the one that we talk about for a little bit of time now, and it's not going to overshadow the 8 of 9 they just pulled off. But it is a team that you expect to have to run through in the playoffs, so you at least want to see how that matchup plays out. You got a prediction?
Oh, they're going to lose. Yeah.
I mean, I just think Toronto is such a good team and playing at such a high level that even if the Sixers were executing on all cylinders, I think I'm not a betting man, but if I was, Toronto would probably get my number, which means we're both going to look stupid and the Sixers are going to pull out a really good road win, and I will be happy to be wrong.
Yeah, well, the Sixers are playing well now, though. I think they're up to, and we talked, last week about how they were kind of I mean, they were playing way above what their actual level of play was. Like
their record was
their
above
record
the level
was so much better, and they had like an even point differential. They're up to 11th in net rating. That's good to see.
Yep.
It's good to see Jimmy not having to hit ridiculous fadeaway shots on the right wing. He hit a ridiculous fadeaway shot tonight, but at least it was, in the flow of the game. Yeah, I'm impressed with how this team is playing right now, but Toronto, to me, has kind of they've almost established themselves as like actual title contenders.
Yeah,
to me, and the Sixers as
few pieces away.
As good as the Butler trade has been, we need to see a little bit more to get to
It'll be real interesting to see what they do coming up to the trade deadline, how much of their future assets they're willing to sell off for contributors, because this is now where you're at the point where you have a core who can contend for at least a run to the NBA Finals. And with the Warriors looking maybe more vulnerable than ever, you start, and I mean, the Rockets, for crying out loud, are they even at 500 yet? Like, I think they're right around 500, if not a game or two below. The path to a championship has opened up. The Sixers core is stronger than it's ever been with those top four. It'll be interesting to see how they navigate the next couple of months. Elton Brand, we talked before the season, or some people talked before the season, about this being a job you can learn on the job for because everything was so ready-made. Not anymore, buddy. They have a championship caliber, at least an Eastern Conference championship caliber core that they now have to surround while still keeping flexibility for the summer. Elton Brand, buddy, you're up. You're up.
He's up, and early returns, I think he swung a pretty good trade. Although, I mean, and I know probably half our audience is going to hate this. The Cubs, there's playing some defense.
He's playing great. He's playing real well
in Minnesota.
I think he's close to matching Butler's scoring output too. He's playing real well for Minnesota.
Yeah, which is good to see because that's a guy who grew up here. And we'll stop because I do understand why. I do
worry about Tibbs running him into the ground though. He might be averaging 40 a night at the end of the season.
Yeah, if he continues to play well, he'll play 48 minutes a night. And I know this isn't a Robert Covington podcast. This is a Sixers podcast, so we understand it. But Elton's gonna have to. He's going to have to fill out this roster. Not with Kyle Korver, as many people thought was going to happen.
No.
But, I mean, I think, what do you think their biggest need is?
I'd love a backup big. Like we talked about, just getting Joel's minutes down. But they need a wing, too. They need a wing who can defend two or three positions and make a shot. Like, they need that in the worst way.
They need a wing, and I also think, like, an Ilyasova type of player. I know that's the easy comparison just because he was here last year, but somebody who can more credibly toggle between 5 and 4 than Muscala.
And I'd love a real defensive point guard too, like TJ. I think he's probably more of a third string point guard than a second string point guard. I like someone they can bring in, make open shots, help improve ball movement. Sixers have really good ball movement, but who can move the ball around. And then slide Simmons to the 3 or the 4 defensively a little more often, so you can play a lot of the small ball that we're talking about. But yeah, a 4-5 would work as well.
You got anybody in mind in terms of a?
I'd have to. DeMarre Carroll's probably the one. Really, what it comes down to is who's going to end up being bought out, who's going to be a veteran, who these bottom-feeding teams aren't going to need. So we'll have to see them play out. Carroll's certainly, to me, a name that pops up.
The buyout market, it's like I think I was listening to,
obviously. I
was listening to Woj's podcast the other day, and obviously he's more plugged in than anybody. He was like, "Yeah, it's like baseball now, where like you can actually get good players on the buyout market, and it's like a thing where you say, well, why am I going to use an asset to trade?
Yeah,
when you could just get a contributor on the buyout.
It's a little bit of a gamble because you're going to wait to see." Which teams fall out of contention first, but then which players, can Trevor Ariza get back an asset? Can you get a good second-round pick by trading away? Because if they can do that, they're not going to buy him out. So you have to see who not only falls out of contention, but who also then doesn't fetch anything up to the trade deadline. So it is a bit of a waiting game, but I do think we'll see what shakes out.
Ariza would be great. Also, just from Trevor Booker being here last year, listening to Brett say Trevor, I enjoyed that.
But that's also why you might not want to jump the gun on a trade, too, because he ended up trading a second-round pick for Trevor Booker.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good. I think that's probably a good spot to jump off. Thank you, Rich, for jumping on. I apologize for the beeping in the background. There is heavy machinery around the Wells Fargo Center after a game, but have a good one.
You too, man.